This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Agner. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Brenden Kumarasamy. Hey, Brenden, how are you, buddy?
Very good, Jay. How are you?
I'm great. CEO and founder of MasterTalk. It was created to help the world master the art of communication, which seems like a very lofty goal, but looking you up and kind of looking at some of your content, it seems like you're well on your way to doing that. So let's kind of take it back to where you started. Where did you grow up, and did that have any kind of, shaping of your entrepreneurial journey?
For sure, Jay. So born and raised in Montreal in Canada. I've lived there my whole life. And in terms of the passion for MasterTalk communication, I was literally the anti-public speaker. So when I was growing up, for those who don't know, Montreal is a city where you need to know how to speak French. And it's a language I didn't know. So my parents sent me to French school so I'd learn it, which of course was a great decision. But every time I had to present, Jay, I had to present in a language that I didn't know, which sucked. So in that way, it played a lot of role in my background later in life because I hated public speaking most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to college. I went to business school to become an accountant of all things. And then I start studying accounting, and then I start competing in these things called case competitions. Think of it like hackathons, but for the business world. So while other guys my age are playing like rugby or something, I was doing presentations competitively. Accidentally got really good at them. Got older, started coaching a bunch of people, and then it turned into what it is today.
Well, that sounds like a very natural progression. How did your French come out? Do you consider yourself fluent at this point?
Yeah. At this point, I'm trilingual because I studied in French from like kindergarten to high school. There's like a law in Quebec called La Loi 101, so the 101 law, to protect the French language. So I'm actually not allowed to go to English school until college and university.
Interesting. I've been listening to this podcast called The History of America, and it goes into some of the general North American colonization. And it's interesting just to kind of hear the background of how, France was such a big influence in Canada, and like how they literally owned Canada. It was a whole, there's just it's interesting to see that flow of how that came about. But so what was your first business you tried to start? Was it MasterTalk?
You got it. And the reason is because I'm the anti-entrepreneur. So a lot of people I'm sure you've had on the show, Jay, were like, oh, I've tried like this business and that business. I never wanted to be a business owner. That was far from the dream. I literally took the safest path to money and income, which was accounting degrees. So I wasn't looking to be an entrepreneur. That was all accidental. So I do these case competitions, and the reason I do them is not because I have a passion for speaking, right? It's because I want to get a job in accounting. A lot of the big four accounting firms like PwC and KPMG, all of their executives are there. So if they see me present, they give me jobs. That's how that's how these things work. Kind of like hackathons, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like you have companies who sponsor them. They go and see who's really good at hacking away, and they give them internships. So it's the same deal. So I start doing these competitions, and I accidentally get really obsessed with them. For some reason, I just start to really fall in love with them. And I kind of forget I was looking for a job. And then I get a great opportunity to work in tech consulting at IBM. So I'm thinking that's going to be my life. I'll be a senior executive at this company and my life is set. But I had coached 50 people for free on how to speak from like 19 to 22. And somebody came up to me and asked me the question that changed my life, Jay, which is, how did you learn how to speak? And I just went, what do you mean, dude? It's like, well, you coached all of us on how to speak. How did you learn how to speak? And I said, I don't know. I kind of just did it. And that's kind of what sparked the idea. But MasterTalk didn't start as a business, though, Jay. I was just making videos in my mom's basement while I was kind of working my amazing job at IBM, which I actually really enjoyed, and I was making really good money. It just accidentally turned to a business, I think, 9 months into MasterTalk.
Interesting. Do you think that your time kind of doing that pro bono free work, coaching people and teaching them how to talk, set you up for the kind of the business side of things as far as what you wanted to do as a curriculum or how you wanted to teach people how to talk?
1000%, Jay. And it did all accidentally too. So I'm coaching these people, but because I'm so naive, Jay, like just to give context on how that started. So how this competition program works is you start as a student, but it's a student-run program. So then the year after, when I started winning and losing a bunch, I became an executive of the program. And I
Mhm.
just looked at the students because we choose who gets in the program and who doesn't. And like 70 people get in every year and maybe like 300 people apply. But I was telling the rest of the students that were managing the program, guys, like 20% of the kids that were signing up for these things are really smart, but they're really bad at communication. Let me just start coaching them. But I had no experience. So I was just coaching them, but I was so naive that they were just going, oh, that's wrong, this doesn't work. So I was kind of throwing a bunch of ideas on the table. So because of that, on a wall rather, and all of my ideas kind of just came from us doing the back and forth. So when I got paid to coach, which was the big weakness I had in business, sales and marketing, I realized that a lot of my ideas were actually pretty transformative and I was getting results pretty quickly for people.
How did you start to tackle the business pieces of the business that you didn't know? What were your kind of steps to conquer sales and marketing? And I'll say with a caveat, I don't think anybody has really conquered sales and marketing. There's no, one size fits all for anybody, but how did you start to attack that?
For sure, Jay. Let's call it sales and marketing now that I can make a decent living doing what I love.
Sure.
Let's put it that
Yes.
way.
Yes.
So for me, the story's a little different where so I'm 9 months into MasterTalk, right? I start making these videos. All the company knows I'm making videos, but for me and them, it's just a hobby. And then I go to Summit of Greatness, which is an event hosted by a podcaster named Lewis Howes in Columbus, Ohio. Been a big fan of the guy, Jay, for like 7 years. I wanted to meet him in person. So I take a flight out to Ohio, of all places, and I attend this conference. And I decide to go to the 5 a.m. workouts at the event, not because I wake up at 5 a.m., but because I just wanted to see who shows up so I could meet him. That's
Mhm.
why I showed up, because I usually wake up at 9 a.m. like I did today. So I go to this workout and I meet Vamsi. And Vamsi is 20 years older than me. He's been married for like 17 years, has 2 kids. He's been working at Blue Cross Blue Shield for like 23 years as an IT director. Literally have very different realities of the world. And he comes up to me and he goes, "So, Brenden, what do you do?" And I look at him, Jay, and I go, "Oh, well, I make YouTube videos." And he starts laughing at me. He's like, "Okay, kid, what are you making YouTube videos on? Like pranks or something?" And I go, "No, public speaking." And he goes, "Oh, cool." So he starts watching my videos, Jay. But what I didn't know is he had a side hustle too. He was a leadership coach, and he still is today, and he's my leadership coach. He coaches a lot of technology professionals in the Indian community primarily
Mhm.
on how to lead more fulfilling lives, optimize their morning routine, things like that. And he watches my videos. They're really shitty at the time. And then he looks at me and he's like, "Do you like have coaching clients? Do you charge for coaching?" And I laughed at him. I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm 23. I don't make money coaching." So we went back home. We get on a Zoom call, and he basically tells me that I should start charging people $3,000 to work with me. And I'm laughing at him, and he says, "I'll give you your first 5 clients. Let's just split the revenue and see where this goes." And that's how my business started, Jay. Yeah.
Wow. And so it was almost and not just accidental, but it was almost mandatory. You were kind of handed the opportunity, and so you took that opportunity. And where did you go from there? You did the first 5 and then realized this was a good fit and you like doing it and it's successful. It's a profitable business. Where did you go from there?
Yeah, for sure, Jay. So now the big question, which I think is more useful to your audience, is how did we go from 5 to 100 clients? Because I'm still in IBM at this point, right, of the story.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of things I realized. One thing that made me successful is focusing on 2 things. One, the right sales channel for the business, and the second one is the right customers. Let's really break this down. One of the big challenges I had in coaching, especially exec communication coaching packages, is I'm really young. Right? I started coaching CEOs when I was like 21 or 22 years old, on a paid basis. So the challenge was getting them to trust me. So I tried B2B sales for a while and I realized this wasn't going to work. I could maybe close a few deals. That's maybe 10% of my business today, but I'm playing at a disadvantage because they're comparing me in an RFP process to Dale Carnegie, to another big established company. And even if I have the right contact, like even IBM, I had trouble selling back to them, even if they know me and they
Right.
know my reputation. So, and because there's always some guy in the funnel who goes, "Why are we giving tens of thousands of dollars to this kid? That makes absolutely no sense." And the sales process ends. I'm not saying I wouldn't have found success, Jay, But for me, a big part of being a business owner is what's the easiest path to victory? Why do we need to make our life hard? I'm better off talking to a podcast host who's more open-minded about hearing more ideas, and now we get to meet in person, which is pretty cool, than convince a university professor that I tried to, that they should share my videos with them when they're super archaic, they don't care about me.
Right.
So what happened? B2C. So what I realized was selling the individual executive was a shorter sales cycle. I wouldn't get a lot of money up front, right? It's not like a $50,000 deal up front. Maybe it's 5,000. But since I know I'm really good at delivery, I could convince that person in front of me to join my program, get them results, and then they would tell all their friends. So
Yeah.
what ended up happening, which is part 2 of this, and I'll throw it back to you, is to focus on the right customer. I'll be the first person to tell you, Jay, I ain't trying to convince the CEO of JP Morgan to work for me. That's a waste of time for all of us. So for me, the question is more about who resonates with me and why. And at the beginning, and this is why I hate the whole advice of find your niche. It's stupid advice. I'll tell you why. Because as an owner, when you get started, especially if it's your first business, you don't know who buys from you and why. So you have
Right.
to kind of present your product to everybody and then figure out later. So the solution was Indian technology professionals who work in big tech. If you're an Indian guy and you're an engineering manager at Amazon and you're making, let's say, 200 grand a year, you do well financially, but internally you're really frustrated because you're going, why is the white guy getting a promotion to VP and not me? And the reason is because they don't know how to lead teams. And they only trust me because I have the same skin color as them. Focusing on that niche made me really successful.
Wow. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So who was your first customer? You don't have to name them by name, but what was the, and maybe it was part of that first 5, or maybe it was after you kind of got it together. Who would you consider kind of your foundational first customer, and how did you get them?
Yeah, so the first customer was actually before Vamsi gave me kind of the first brown Indian guys, because I always like to shoot it for what it is, which is
Yeah,
that's
sure.
what
No,
it
I
is.
love that.
Right. And obviously I coach people across different ethnicities. Like my first client was actually a guy that I met at that conference, Jay. So I met Jay in the morning, not Jay, I met Vamsi in the morning. And then later I met Ludimir. I'm more than happy to talk. All my clients are public anyways, except maybe like 3 I signed NDAs for. So I met this guy, Ludimir. At this point, he had just quit his job at Amazon and he was looking to get into real estate, wholesaling and go all in on the real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just giving him advice because that's my natural self. I think that's why I became a dangerous entrepreneur in this space because I just love coaching. Even if we met, when we meet up, if we have the time for it at Collision, I'm literally just gonna go like, "So, what are you working on?" And I'll just
Right.
listen to you.
Right.
So when I'm talking to people, Vludimir's kind of telling me his life, and I just give him advice as we're eating lunch, and I just keep talking to him. And then 3 days after the conference ends, he calls me and he goes, "Hey, Brenden, I just really love the advice you gave me. You really poured your heart into me. I really appreciate it. Do you do coaching?" And I go, "Yeah, man, let's start on Monday." But I'm thinking like for free. Like, "Yeah, I'll just coach you on Monday. Let's just keep doing this."
Right.
And he's like, "No, I want to pay you for your time." You know what I asked him, Joe? I asked him, "Why would you pay me?" I literally asked him that question. And he looked confused and he said, "Well, the reason I would pay you is because you spent so many years listening to 800 episodes of Lewis Howes's podcast. I don't want to waste 800 hours. I'd
Right.
rather just pay you whatever you want for the 3 hours of the condensed knowledge so I can
Sure.
save the time." So he was selling me on the idea of charging him. So I said, "Oh, I guess that makes sense." Because I didn't really understand that the whole value of why people buy coaching packages and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I just said, "Is $100 an hour okay?" He said, "Yeah, I'd love to book 7 sessions." And he sent me $700, and that was my first client.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm. So explain to me how, and I'll rewind a little bit, but you kind of, your story starts with, not a lot of confidence, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of feeling like you're not in the right place, or, not fitting in. I know the process was through the case competitions, but what was the process to really build that confidence up to where you could go out and do these things? Because even if you had that offer, maybe at some other point in your life, I don't know if you'd be confident enough to have accepted it, right? You're like, okay, now I know I can do this. And not just because this guy sold on me, but also because I built my confidence up. Like, how did you build that confidence up throughout those years?
It's a great question, Jay. So I'll give you, it's a tricky one to answer for sure. So follow up if you think I'm missing some details.
Sure.
So the first part of that I'll say is a quote by Ali Gadet that I think will help us clarify and simplify all of this for any business owner of any industry, which is simply this. If you help one person, the world will give you permission to help everyone else. And the problem with so many people who start businesses or just anything in general is they don't bring that mentality to the game. Like for me, yeah, I could talk all day about how cool I am that I coach the CFO of this publicly traded company. I have all these accolades now. But that's not entirely the truth because I didn't start that way. So when I was 19, so I've been doing this for 8 years now. So even if I'm young, it's been a long time that I've been coaching. Like we talked about early on the show, the first 50 people I coached for free.
Mm-hmm.
So I genuinely did not know what I was doing. So at the beginning, it was just a 17-year-old kid. And then it was people my own age. And then it was like friends of mine who were getting jobs at Salesforce or IBM. They weren't paying me. It was just fun for me to kind of help them do these case competitions. But then what happened is there was like a pivotal shift where I immediately started coaching CEOs. So I told you I'm coaching CEOs at 20 or 22, but I'm not telling you who they are. So I'll tell you. I was a venture capitalist for a year. It was like the student-run fund called Front Row Ventures in Canada. It's like an early stage fund where the thesis is if you give students money and they become GPs of the fund, for those who aren't aware of this, it's like general partners, they invest money into startups, then we can get access to a brand new suite of startups that the people who run companies as adults or as investors don't see because they're not in colleges with these people. And a lot of big companies start in college, like Snapchat and Facebook, etc. So I start being an investor kind of for fun, and I don't know why they picked me, honestly, to do this. It's not big checks, so it's like 25 grand, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these CEOs go like, hey, you're so good at communication. Dude, I'm having this problem right now. I'm trying to raise $1 million or 100,000, but no one wants to help me with my pitch deck. And I really suck at pitching, and I don't have any money to pay for you. So I said, don't worry, bro. Let me just look at the pitch deck. So I went through like 50 of them. So, and through just practice. So at the beginning, I didn't know what feedback. I was going, oh, I'd look online. I'd like look online what the process was. Oh, you're missing traction or you're missing this. And I'd make a bunch of mistakes. But then after CEO 50, Jay, I got really good at this. So the point that I want to drive from this story is a key 3-sentence word here that brings the value. Show, don't tell. Whenever you're a business owner, don't tell people what you do. It's a waste of time. Show people what you do. So the problem that I had, the insecurities I had, honestly, Jay, wasn't really around me being a coach because I fixed all of those insecurities long before it became a business.
Mm-hmm.
The insecurities that I had, which I obviously did, was around charging people money for what I was doing, seeing the value. Why would people buy money or spend money on me? And that's really what I had to work through. But in terms of my confidence as a coach, I'm not going to tell you I was innate. I earned that confidence because I had coached so many bloody people that I just became good enough that it became undeniable at some point.
That makes a lot of sense. What are your, this will be an interesting question. What are some of your insecurities today? What do you think you need to grow out still today?
A ton, man, a ton. I'll give you one that was really funny. Actually, as a side note, I have a notepad on my phone that literally says list of current weaknesses. So it's not about solving everything, but just having that awareness. So you're a great listener, by the way. So one of those weaknesses that I have today is around money. So for example, I'm really good now at spending money on the business. So I just draw out maybe like 15,000 to like do more Instagram reels, things like that. But I'm horrible at spending money on my own well-being. Like I haven't been to a dentist appointment in like a year. So I'm like, why do I need to spend $200 on this? It makes no sense to me. This chair, my business partner forced me to buy. He like took out his credit card and bought it for me because I had a dining chair that I've been using for 10 years. He's like, dude, like I'm not a billionaire, but like I'm doing okay, like enough to like not have to go back to corporate and whatnot.
Right.
He goes like, dude, why don't you spend $200 on a good chair? Like it's a one-time investment, it's tax deductible.
Yeah.
And I'm going, nah, like my dining chair is just fine. And he's like, what will your clients think of you? So that's another example. So and I've been sleeping on the same mattress. I have to change it next month for like 12 years.
It's got a lot of former parts of Brenden on that mattress for sure.
Yes.
It's got a lot of dead skin in there. All right, I'm going to ask you another question. If you had to start MasterTalk over tomorrow with the lessons you've learned, what would be step 1 in starting it over?
Yeah, great question, Jay. So step one would be trying to get a client as quickly as possible. So if I don't have credibility, let's actually make the analogy more interesting. So I started Over Tomorrow with no relationships. The Vamsi wasn't my business partner. I didn't have any key points here. I can't call somebody
Mm-hmm.
for a client. Here's what I would do. I would do a DM strategy on LinkedIn, and I would target Indian executives or executives in general. I don't want to make this about me, make this applicable across the board. Just execs. I would not target students because they're broke, and I learned that lesson early. And I would offer them all a free coaching session. And I would expect maybe in 100 to 200 DMs, let's say 1 out of 200 says yes to the call, and I would just coach them for free for 60 minutes because I still have the skill set, right? And then I would say 1 in every 5 of those calls would become a client. That's the first
I
thing
like
that I would
that.
do.
Love that, and that's a very applicable lesson to other people, and it's also just doing it, right? I mean, that's a prime example of just doing it. Like, I was on a podcast recently, they're saying, what is your advice to other entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs? And it's just do it. Like, I mean, it's you just do something. Like, talk is cheap is not a phrase for no reason. Like, it's less than cheap. Talk is nothing, right? I mean, you can say you're going to do something, but if you're going to start a business, doing something is the most important thing. All right, so let's take a complete pivot. You're still a young guy. I'm a little bit older than you. I think sounds about like 10 years older than you. But what were sort of 3 healthy things in your life as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, that you're trying to do to increase your longevity, to make sure you're tuned up, mentally, physically, emotionally? What are 3 of those things?
For sure. And for the record, I'm 27. I'm super open about my age. So
I'm 37. I am
Yeah.
too. So I had it dead on. I did the math. That's about the extent of my math. 19 plus, I think 8, you said at some point. So I figured that out, but don't, I'm not an accounting guy. Don't ask me for numbers.
You're all good. You're all good, man. So great question and interesting pivot. So there's 3 things you asked for. So let me give you the first one that comes off. Write a bliss list. I got this from another coach. I thought it was really fascinating. Basically, you make a list of small little things, not big things, not go to Mount Everest or something. Small little things that bring you joy. And for all of us, that's going to be very different. So for you, it might be reading a book. For me, it's literally dancing in between meetings. It's literally, this is super fun for me. So like going on a podcast is super interesting. Having heated dinners with my friends to a point where everybody else in the restaurant gets annoyed. So notice how the things on my list are really specific. Go to a dance club, don't buy any drinks, just pay the cover fee and have the best workout of your life. Everything's very specific. Or buy a tiramisu for $3 or $5 at a bakery or some gelato or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you do is you sprinkle these little things throughout your week, or if you're feeling really down, or throughout the month. So you don't have to do this every day. That's one way that I do this to
I
keep
like
my
that.
energy levels really high all the time. Like yesterday, I mean, I'll be honest, I was super exhausted because I filmed 83 Instagram reels in a day. So I did like 300 in 3 weeks because I was playing way too small with that platform. So I just said, let me just make a write a check and just get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So to bring my energy back up, I black up my calendar. So this is like my second meeting today. I started my meetings like 10 today. I just slept for 11 hours.
Beautiful.
So that's the second tip. Really have a strong self-awareness of what your energy levels look like. Because the biggest piece that isn't talked enough about in entrepreneurship is the game is really to outlast your competition. And that's especially true with young entrepreneurs like me, which a lot of wiser people have already told me. Is like, Brenden, you're 27 years old, you're already signing some pretty cool clients, and you have 8 years of experience. There is nobody in your age group who's going to beat you in your lifetime, as long as you stay consistent. That's the big thing.
Right.
So since the game is to outlast your competition, like all of my friends and colleagues in the communication space are like double my age. Like Bo Eason, 63, Roger Love is 60, Alex Line is like in his 50s, Carl Kwan too, Vanessa Van Andrews like 30s. So all these people are at least a decade older than me. So as long as I just stay the same way and I just compound over time without doing anything stupid, I'll win the game. Which is number 2. So really look at your life and ask yourself a different question. Don't go, what's hot right now? How do I get the business? How do I do this? Versus like, what are the strategies that I can implement to stay consistent 10 years from now without going out of business?
Mm-hmm.
That question isn't asked enough. So when you do that, I mean, when I'm your age, hopefully I'll be as successful as you. That's number 2.
I'm sure you'll be much more successful than
see.
I am. What's number 3?
Yeah, I would say number 3. I mean, we talked about the bliss list, we talked about energy levels. For me, at number 3, so I'll pivot a little bit here, is to take the time and journal iconic moments that you want to live in your business. One thing that's really challenging as entrepreneurs, and that's why I like Russell Brunson's kind of spin on this from ClickFunnels, is like he created this award called 2 Comma Club, which is like if you hit $1 million in your funnel, you get an award. But the problem is in entrepreneurship, every time you hit a milestone, there's no award. Like there's no, hey Jay, take this time to really celebrate. So we don't actually hit the milestones. And that's why there's like this term, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's called like the 7-year rut, where you get into 7 years of business. For some reason it's 7. And you go like, man, should I really stay in business? Even if you're really close to the pot of gold. So the way that I've circumvented this is to describe my iconic moments. So that means take a piece of paper and write out like, what's one iconic moment, ideally 10, but start with 1 that you want to live in your life throughout the cycle of your business. So in my case, I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I don't think I am. It's not my DNA. I'm going to be in the same business for like my whole life. But for me, it's like being a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast. When I get to 100,000 on YouTube and I get a nice plaque, I want to have like a dinner at a really expensive restaurant with like the top 50 people who really believed in me early in life. So I picture that dinner, which is probably like 7 years off or something.
I love that.
Right? So it's like those iconic moments that re-energize yourself. And it's not just about writing that down, describe it in detail so that it happens one day and you get excited about that pursuit.
Dude, those are 3 that are new to the show, and I love every single one of them. And I may take a couple of those myself. All right, so mystery question time. Again, it gets tired of me saying this. It's the same question every week. Somebody's eventually going to know the mystery question. So it's interested to see your answer. So non-business related, not related to your company's growth, not related to whatever. What is one thing you would do if you knew you couldn't fail?
What's one thing that I would do if I knew I couldn't fail, not business related? I'm kind of like Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm super boring. Like all I do is business. Is there anything I would do in my life that if I didn't fail? I mean, the only thought that comes to mind right now is probably stand-up comedy. Like when I
That's
was
a great answer. I love
yeah,
that answer.
yeah, like when I was 12 years old, before I made the decision to be an accountant, I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and the reason I chose not to was because Russell Peters is my hero. Like he's like one of my favorite stand-up comedians, and I watched him on an episode of MTV Cribs, and I just saw his lifestyle, and I didn't like what I was seeing, and I was like, oh my god, I do not want to do this. So I guess stand-up comedy might be
Okay, that's a
interesting.
great
Yeah,
answer. I feel like I heard that was maybe somebody else said that. That's a great answer. I love that one. All right, well, let's end it there. This was great. You're very high energy, motivational, smart guy. Appreciate you giving me some of your very valuable time. If people are looking for you, I'm sure maybe one of your 83 Instagram reels may come across their feed. But what are the ways that they get in touch with you and that they find MasterTalk?
for sure, Jay. This is super fun, by the way. Very different from my usual intros. So
Cool, man. I'm glad. Thank you.
So thanks, man. This is a treat. So 2 ways to keep in touch. The first one is definitely the YouTube channel. Just go to MasterTalk. You'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to speak. And then the second way to keep in touch is to attend one of our free communication workshops. So I do a free one every 2 weeks. It's live, it's fun, and it really goes back to show, don't tell, right? Don't tell people you're a communication coach, just show them on a call. So 50 people from around the world attend it every 2 weeks. So just jump on it. You don't have to be the CEO of a tech company. You could be a 7-year-old kid. Everyone's invited. And if you want to jump on that, go to rockstarcommunicator.com.
Beautiful. Love it. Well, Brenden, I will hopefully see you next week. I'll do my
Definitely.
best. I think we should definitely, well, have no excuse not to at least be in
Even
the
for
same
5
place at the
minutes.
same time. I was going to
Yeah,
say, if these are the same place at the same time, we're in the, I've never been to Canada, so this will be my first trip up. But looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you, brother. You were great. And let's catch up and talk again soon, okay?
absolutely.
Thanks for being on, buddy. See you.
Thanks, man.